Hey folks, Slug Guy Gaming here with another Magic the Gathering deck tech for the Ixalan season of Standard. Today I'm going to be bringing you a black-white control build that I threw together last night. I might try it this week at my local game store. It seemed interesting, and it's something a little bit different than what the meta currently has, so I figured I'd share it with you guys. Starting off, we'll get right into it with the lands. First off, we have two of the Ifnir Deadlands. Two Field of Ruin, good for getting rid of some of the flip lands from Ixalan, especially the Azcanta, or even I guess a treasure map, because you don't want to have your opponent drawing all those cards. Next up we have 4, 5, 6 planes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 swamp. 3 Forsaken Sanctuary, and a full playset of Concealed Courtyard for a total of 25 lands. So pretty straightforward mana base. The Ifnir Deadlands are in there for another purpose, to synergize with something else that's in the deck, which I'll talk about later. Next up, we have the creatures. We have 3 Walking Ballista, 1 Glint-Sleeve Siphoner, just for a little extra card draw. 3 Gifted Aetherborn, just because he's super good, and he gains you life, which is relevant for a few things in the deck. These are 3 of. 1 Kinjalli Sunwing, good against the aggro matchups. It's just a decent 2/3 flyer for 3 and has the bonus of your creatures end the battlefield tapped. And having only 2 power is also relevant too for something that's in the deck. 3 Kambal Consul Allocation, just because I've never played with him and I really want to try him out. And he seems like he's pretty good in the current meta. For those of you who don't know, he's for 1 colorless white-black. He's a 2/3 legendary creature, human advisor. And whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So every time your opponent casts a non-creature spell, you basically drain them for 2 life. Is a 3 of. Next up, we have 1 Cataclysmic Gearhulk. Again, it's a card I've never really played with and I want to try, and it seems like it'd be pretty decent in a deck like this. You want your opponent to be down on, you control your opponent's board as much as possible, and that's exactly what this does. It's a, for 3 colors, 2 white, it's a 4/5 Vigilance artifact creature construct, with Vigilance, I should say. And when he enters the battlefield, each player chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among their non-land permanents, and they sacrifice the rest. So, choose artifact for this, creature for something else, and maybe enchantment for something else. And then they have to sacrifice everything else. And a planeswalker, obviously. But it just helps control their board, manage their board, especially if they're trying to go wide in something like the tokens builds that are running around right now, or Godpharaoh's Gift was a good one. Just anything that tries to build up a big board. Next up, we have 1 Vona, Butcher of Magan. She's for 3 colorless, a white and a black. She's a 4/4 legendary creature, Vampire Knight. She has Vigilance and Lifelink, and you can tap her and pay 7 life to destroy target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only during your turn. So this is one of the reasons why you want to be building up as much life as possible with those Gifted Aetherborns, because 7 life is a lot to pay, but the ability is very powerful. It gets rid of anything, doesn't have indestructible or hexproof. So, yeah, she's really good. She herself gains you life, obviously. She has lifelink, but it's just nice to have enough life to bank on getting her ability off at least once or twice, even if you can't swing in with her. So she's a 1 of. Next up, we have 1 Angel of Invention. For 3 colors, 2 white, it's a 2/1. Flying Vigilance Lifelink, and it has Fabricate 2, so you either put 2 counters on her or you make 2 servos when she enters, and other creatures you control get +1/+1. And the fact that she has 2 power is very relevant too. So she's our last creature. Then moving on to non-creature spells, I have 3 Duress, a playset of Fatal Pushes, 2 Grind to Dust. You may not be familiar with this card, but it's Grind is 1 colorless, 1 black. Put a -1/-1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And then Dust is 3 colors, 1 white. Exile any number of target creatures that have -1/-1 counters on them. This is a card that synergizes with Ifnir Deadlands. If you're not able to kill a creature by putting 2 -1/-1 counters on it, you can then exile it if you find a Grind to Dust. So some decent synergy there. Next up we have 1 Arguel's Bloodfast, which is for 1 colorless, 1 black. It's a legendary enchantment. You pay 1 colorless, 1 black, pay 2 life to draw a card. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 5 or less life, you may transform Arguel's Bloodfast, and it transforms into something. I believe it taps for either a black or a colorless, and then you can tap it and sacrifice a creature to gain life equal to that creature's toughness. 1 second. Yes, it taps. Sorry, I had to look at it with one hand. So yeah, it taps to add a black, or you can tap it, sacrifice a creature to gain life equal to that creature's toughness. So it's a little bit more life gain if you're in a tough spot. Next up, it's also a really good card draw in a deck that gains quite a bit of life. Next up, 2 Doomfalls, and then 2 Dusk to Dawn. Dusk is destroy creatures with power 3 or greater. The only creatures in our deck that have power 4 or greater are Vona and our Cataclysmic Gearhulk. Everything else on its base stats are power 2 or less, including Angel of Invention. Of course, if I have an Angel of Invention out, then all my 2 power creatures have 3 powers, but I'm still able to bring them back with Dawn, and that's the key thing, is all my creatures except for Vona and Cataclysmic I can get back from my graveyard with Dawn, which is pretty decent. So I'm not really too concerned if my opponent is removing a lot of my creatures. If I can get Dawn off, it'll refill my hand with resources. So it is a 2 of. Next up we have 2 Settle the Wreckage for anything that is like indestructible, or you can get rid of Scarab God, for instance. Just exile effects are really good right now in Standard, because a lot of the big threats, like in the mono red, big threat is Hazoret, like I said, and Scarab God is everywhere right now. If anybody can splash for it, they are. So it's just nice to have exile effects. Which brings me to Cast Out. Everybody knows Cast Out. It's a 3 of in the deck. It's good catch-all, instant speed. You can cycle it if you are looking for a land or something. So it's just a good removal spell. It's a 3 of. And then finally we have 2 Fumigates, which is good for mass removal and a little bit of life gain. Just a good value spell. The best Wrath, really. I think it's the only Wrath in the format right now. I think. Pretty sure. Anyway, so that's it for the main board. Moving on to the sideboard. The sideboard I had to be a little more choosy with because I have other decks in these colors. So the sideboard is suggestive, and there are some improvements that you could easily make, and I'll go through those. First up was a card that I kind of just threw in because I wanted to try it. Was Gideon's Intervention. It's just a decent. It's an enchantment for 2 colors, 2 white. As Gideon's Intervention enters the battlefield, choose a card name. Your opponents can't cast spells with the chosen name, and prevent all damage that would be dealt to you by permanents with you control by sources with the chosen name. So it would be good for, like, if you're having trouble getting rid of a Hazoret against mono red, or I don't know, any big threat. It's just a fun card that you can shut something off with. I didn't have it in here for any specific reason other than I've never played with it, and it was the 15th card I threw in. So it's just a neat card that I kind of wanted to try. Next up, a 3rd Fumigate for any of the go-wide strategies. You want to be able to wipe their board. 1 Solemnity against energy. It's a little bit slow, but I mean, Wizards doesn't really know how to print sense properly, so they didn't really make any answers for energy. You know, they didn't print a single card that says X player, target player loses all energy counters they have, or anything like that. So we got to do what we can to fight the energy mechanic, which is OP as balls, which everybody knows. So yeah, Solemnity is in here to try and hose energy decks, although it's kind of slow, being a 3-drop. Yeah, that's what it's there for. It's also good against if you're playing against like black-reds or black-green snakes or something like that, but you don't really see a whole lot of that these days. It's kind of been taken over by energy. So yeah, Solemnity is a one-of. Next up, we have 2 Authority of the Consuls for hosing any of the mono-red aggressive decks. Shuts down their haste, and it gains you life. Next up, 2 Ixalan's Binding, just some more enchantment removal for the mono-red and the Scarab God decks. If you're able to resolve an enchantment against blue-black control, they literally have no answer for it. I mean, they could maybe bounce it back to your hand, but yeah, Ixalan's Binding is good. It's a tough debate between Ixalan's Binding and Cast Out, because Cast Out is instant speed and it has cycling, but Ixalan's Binding has the added feature of they can't cast anything that's exiled with it. So it's kind of a toss-up, so I threw a couple of both in here. So, including the sideboard, I have 6 4-mana enchantments that deal with all non-permanents. So in the end, that should be enough to get you through the Hazarets and the Scarab Gods and whatnot, the Planeswalkers. So it's 2 Ixalan's Binding, the 4th Cast Out, 4th Gifted Aetherborn, against like the mono-red aggressive decks. Next up, we have 2 Never to Returns. Never just deals with creatures and planeswalkers, and return allows you to exile threats in your opponent's graveyard and get a 2/2 zombie out of it. You could easily have something like a Vraska's Contempt in this slot. I probably would have had Vraska's Contempt in this slot, except I'm playing them in my Sultai control deck. Well, mid-range control / is kind of a hybrid deck that I threw together. So yeah, 2 Never to Returns, which could easily be Vraska's Contempt. 2 Aethersphere Harvester, just for a little bit of extra life gain. It's a good value creature against the aggressive decks. And finally, 2 Gideon of the Trials, because he's good against control. He's good for hosing big threats in aggressive decks. And the Yugan Emblem is a decent ability. If you're able to build up a board around him, it just puts another obstacle in your opponent's way for if they want to beat you. So I already said Vraska's Contempt. Vraska's Contempt is an easy upgrade on the sideboard. You could even put it main board if you wanted, like maybe cut down on like maybe Cast Out or Settle the Wreckage or Dusk Dawn. But I really want to try Settle the Wreckage and Dusk Dawn. I haven't played a lot with them, so I decided to not put any Vraska's Contempt in. On top of the fact that I have them in my other deck, and it's just kind of annoying to swap them back and forth all the time. You know, we can't all be sponsored by TCG Player, you know what I mean? So, you could also easily put them in your sideboard. Another upgrade for the main board would be Regal Caracal. That card is just really good, and it puts out a lot of lifelink. And it's perfect in a design like this where you want to be able to use your life as a resource. So yeah, Regal Caracal either in the main board or the sideboard would be great. I unfortunately don't have any of those cards, so it wasn't really an option for me. So I decided to try the Angel of Invention and the Cataclysmic Gearhulk. And Vona is, I had one of them and it's shiny, it's foil, so I wanted to try it. And I mean, it's kind of built, it's kind of a card that's designed for a white black control deck such as this. So it's another card that I'm just interested to try out. So yeah, that's pretty much it, folks. Thanks for watching. Feel free to comment anything that you liked about the deck or any suggestions that I didn't mention. There's certainly a lot of options for white-black control right now. I'm really excited to see how Kambal does and if he's worth it. I mean, I imagine 9 times out of 10 he'll just eat like a Harness Lightning or something. But, you know, whatever. I'll drain them for 2 and then slam another one, hopefully. So yeah, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. I try to upload at least 1 video a week. I don't have the huge card database that some other channels have. I shouldn't say everyone else, I don't want to sound bitter, but I try to do my best with what I have and to bring new and innovative builds for you guys. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you all again real soon.